Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started. So my name is Ben Smith. I'm the board chair for GrowSmart Maine. I'd like to welcome everybody to the 2021 GrowSmart Summit here in Biddeford. The theme of the summit is turning climate action into economic opportunity. And this summit is really building on some great planning work, very ambitious planning work that's taking place at the state level with the Climate Action Plan and the 10-year Economic Development Plan. And what we want to do here today is make a very direct connection between acting on the climate imperative and building lasting prosperity for the people of Maine. And we are here today in Biddeford because we love Maine. And in that spirit, we'd like to take a moment to honor the people of the Wabanaki Confederacy, the Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, and Mi'kmaq peoples. These people are the traditional inhabitants of the lands of the state of Maine, and no matter where you are today in Maine, you are on traditional Wabanaki territory. So throughout the day, as you think about your personal relationship with this place that we call home and what the future might bring, please consider the relationship that members of the Wabanaki Confederacy have shared and continue to share with this place as well. There are, as I had alluded to, a number of satellite locations. This is an approach to the summit that we had built last year at the start of COVID, and hopefully we're kind of toward the end of COVID. But there are folks here in Biddeford connecting to the conference virtually this morning, as well as connecting virtually from satellite locations around the state. Those locations are in Bangor at the Eastern Maine Development Corp., Auburn at the Androscoggin Valley Council of Governments, Machias, Sunrise County Economic Development Council, in Sydney, hosted by the Kennebec Valley Council of Governments at the Snow Pond Center for the Arts, and in Caribou at the Northern Maine Development Commission. We will be hearing from those folks throughout the day, so welcome to everyone connecting virtually as well. And finally, I'd like to thank our sponsors. There are many sponsors for today's event, and we really could not do an event like this without those sponsorships, so thank you. And in particular, I'd like to thank the Nature Conservancy of Maine, the Betterment Fund, Central Maine Power, Bangor Savings Bank, Kennebec Savings Bank, A New Development, and Maine Housing. So if you join me in thanking those folks. So just a little bit of housekeeping. There are, if you're in Biddeford, there is a lobby right outside the main entrance with restrooms. There's snacks and coffee in this side of the room. Hopefully you saw those on your way in. And the schedule for the day, starting right now, is we're going to dive into a quick presentation, followed by keynotes and regional breakout sessions. We will have lunch here in this room if you're in Biddeford with the annual business meeting and the 4th annual GrowSmart Awards. And we'll be wrapping up our portion of the summit with recognition of board members for their service to GrowSmart. And then Experience Maine will be involved with walking tours at some locations, and you'll have information on that at your local venue. So with that, I would like to introduce Brian and Brett, who will be connecting virtually. Brian is the Senior Climate Resilience Coordinator with the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation and the Future. Brian has 15 years of community, conservation, and nonprofit experience in New England and the Mid-Atlantic region, and is here this morning to share information regarding 2 community resilience and infrastructure programs under development to support municipalities and tribal governments. So with that, I think we will bring Brian up on screen, and welcome again. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thanks very much to the GrowSmart team for having me this morning. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I am super thrilled that this year's summit is focused on climate and resilience. I know many of you are participating this morning, contributed to the state's climate action plan and its programming, so thank you very much for that. And I know an equal number of you are thinking hard about how to implement the state's goals and strategies in your own communities. And so we have a lot of work ahead of us And I'm really excited this morning to talk about two programs that will soon be coming online to help communities in Maine reduce emissions and increase their resilience. I'm going to talk today briefly about two programs, both at a high level, and we'll have much more detail for you in the coming weeks and months. So this is really just a teaser, so stay tuned for more information. The first program is a municipal and tribal partnership program. Don't get too attached to the title on this slide because the name is going to change before we launch it. But the program is going to deliver $4.75 million in grants, technical assistance, and capacity building for communities in Maine to plan and take action on climate change. There will be grants directly to towns and tribes for actions that reduce reduce emissions that cause climate change and reduce the risks to people, infrastructure, and the environment associated with sea level rise, higher temperatures, inland flooding, and other climate impacts. There will be grants to build regional capacity among organizations that support communities and to foster regional collaboration among communities to take these kinds of actions and do the kind of planning that you all know is needed. Importantly, the funds for this program are allocated from the state's general fund, so they can be used by communities as match to leverage larger federal opportunities. So this is a really exciting piece of this program. And lastly, many of you are aware of the Community Resilience Pilot Project that's been running for the last 6 months or so. This pilot and the experience of the organizations and communities that participated in it directly informs the new program that we're launching, and we hope to have launched by the end of this year. The second program is an Infrastructure Adaptation Fund pilot. This is funded with $20 million from the state's American Recovery Plan Act allocation. The Adaptation Fund will support infrastructure improvements that address climate vulnerabilities and anticipate future climate conditions in the design of projects. We expect that this fund will fill gaps for infrastructure projects that don't already have a dedicated state funding source. So we're not interested in duplicating existing funding streams with this one. So if you have a culvert project, there's already a culvert program at DEP with funding that you can take advantage of. We're looking for this program to fill some of those gaps for projects that you have that might not have a clear funding source for. And we expect that this fund will support the all-important pre-development work like engineering, permitting, site design, all of that, in addition to construction. So that you can get some of the really important projects that you have in conceptual form down on paper and ready to take advantage of either this fund or other funding sources that you have in mind for that project. As I said, these two projects we hope to be coming online in the next couple of weeks to months. So stay tuned. There'll be a lot more information coming out about these. We'll be doing some outreach probably through December and January and February. So stay tuned for webinars and other ways to learn more. And if you do have any questions, my contact is at the bottom of this slide, as well as my colleagues at the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation in the Future and over at DOT. So please reach out if you have questions. And I do have a couple of minutes to stick around here and take any questions at the moment. So thank you all very much and enjoy your day.
Brian, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate the overview of the programs. At this point, we're going to move right into the keynotes, and I'll do that by introducing Tyler Kidder. She's the program officer at the Onion Foundation, which encourages environmental conservation and stewardship, as well as music and the arts through grant making in Maine. And previously, Tyler held roles at GrowSmart Maine, Efficiency Maine, and the University of Southern Maine. So thank you, and welcome, Tyler.
Thanks, Ben. This is like the little mask dance. We take the mask off, and then we put it back on. Buttons. Let's see here. So my job is to transition us into the keynote part of this. Do I have a button that Yes. Okay, so this is the slide that Brian just shared with us. There are printed versions of it on the table when you came in, so if you haven't yet picked it up and you'd like to look at it in more detail, please do so. And again, their contact information for all of the members of that office that you might want to contact are at the bottom, and the print version has them pretty clearly as well. So we're here today and we're talking about climate. And for those of you who somehow have not been paying any attention, which way are we going? Oh, green button, you guys, thank you. We're getting it. There it is. There's also a print copy of this if you'd like to look at it in more detail. And of course, thank you, Becca. She's on it. This is a page out of the current climate plan that our state has been working on. There are 4 top action plan goals that include reducing Maine's greenhouse gas emissions, avoiding the impacts and costs of inaction, foster economic opportunity and prosperity, and advance equity through Maine's climate response. And with our time here today, we're really going to be talking mostly about strategy F, which is building healthy and resilient communities. And there's a print copy of this available for you as well. And we're really talking about responding to climate impacts occurring now and expected soon. We're building in state support for communities to be proactive about understanding, planning, and acting to reduce the risk from climate change. And some of the focus areas of this support is emergency management, economic development, public health, transportation, energy, and infrastructure. And the state should promote regional collaboration among towns and offer technical assistance, funding, updated land use planning, as well as expanded public health efforts. So we're really interested here today in talking about the different roles that we all have in the climate change work, and we are going to be joined by 2 keynote speakers to talk with us more about opportunities and challenges and how we can work through that together. And I also want to talk about really quickly the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, which draws upon the Governor's Economic Recovery Committee and the vision for Maine in the state's 10-year economic development strategy. And the most important part of this slide, and the thing that has the most relevance to us right now and that can be acted on quickly, is the focusing on the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan. So this first part of the slide. This is how the state is managing the ARPA funding coming through the federal government. So there's multiple ways that we all can be utilizing various state resources and programs. And I think our role is to really think about how to creatively leverage this work and how to be thoughtful about roles across our communities, across our regions in our state, that what we can each be doing. So anyone interested in interfacing with the state itself via the ARPA funding buckets should follow along the procurement process on the website. So there's a lot more information about this on various websites at the state level. And the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan incorporates the insight of economic, business, and community leaders in Maine. It's a data-driven understanding of Maine's economy before and during the pandemic and the experiences of Maine people whose lives were disrupted by COVID-19. So there's a lot going on. We're in this moment to take advantage of all of the programs, the federal money, the state money, the new state's commitment to climate. And with that, I want to turn to our keynotes. So we are joined by 2 great speakers this morning. They'll each have about 30 minutes, and then I will facilitate a loose discussion with them for another 30 minutes. So first, I'd like to welcome Dr. Devashri Saha. She's a senior associate at the World Resources Institute, United States. In this role, she supports state, city, and federal policymakers as they work to develop and implement policies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and support clean energy.
There you go, it works. Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Great. So let's get started. First of all, thank you for inviting me here. This is actually my second trip to Maine this year. My husband and I visited the Acadia National Park in May, and I have to admit, I just fell in love with the state, and I kept pestering my husband that we really need to buy a house here. My name is Devashri Saha. I'm a senior associate in World Resources Institute. Before I provide a little bit of background on the research work that I do, let me just introduce WRI. WRI is a global research organization which focuses on 7 key challenges: food, forests, water, energy, climate, the ocean, and cities. We work with governments, businesses, multilateral institutions, as well as civil society groups to develop practical solutions that can improve everyone's life and also protect the environment and address climate change. At WRI, my research actually focuses on multiple areas. On one hand, I analyze different types of policies that can help the country decarbonize as quickly as possible, and I mainly focus in the power sector and transportation. And second, more and more, my research is now leaning towards analyzing the economics of climate action. What do I mean by that? So how can decarbonization policies and investments benefit the economy, consumers, and businesses? So that is what I want to talk about with you today, America's new climate economy. What does new climate economy mean? It means that it is basically based on the premise that taking climate action can unlock powerful social and economic benefits. Climate action is not too expensive, as it is often mentioned to be, and that economic growth and climate action should not be seen as opposing each other. It is possible to do both. So that is sort of the main gist of my presentation today. Okay. So before I even get into the nitty-gritties of my presentation, I just want to emphasize the key takeaways. And the first message that I want to share is that ignoring climate change is going to be a heck of a lot expensive. Climate change is a threat multiplier, just like we saw with COVID-19. The sooner we take action, the better and cheaper it is going to be for us. Second, low-carbon investments and policies will deliver strong net benefits for all Americans, especially in this scenario as the country is recovering from the pandemic. Investment in clean energy and low-carbon sectors can solve multiple problems at once. It can create jobs, grow the economy, and protect public health, not to mention that we can also reduce emissions. Third, the transition to a low-carbon economy has to be inclusive and equitable. We have to make sure that it is equitable for people at all income levels, and we have to make sure that we are leaving no one behind, especially those who are dependent on the fossil fuel economy. So just transition issues are going to be really important. And there's a reason why this has to be really stressed. We don't want any backlash to climate policies. Finally, addressing the climate change will require a whole-of-society approach to deliver transformative economy-wide change. This means it's all hands-on-deck approach. The federal government, state, local government, the private sector, academia and research institutes, philanthropies, and civil society all have a role to play. So before we talk about the economics of climate action, I just want to remind us of the climate goals that we have set. We all know that the threats of climate change are increasing on a daily basis, and the Biden administration has set a goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by no later than 2050. And by 2030, the target is that we will reduce our emissions compared to 2005 level between 50 to 52%. Okay, so this decade, we have to hit that at least that 50% reduction goal. Between 2005 and 2020, we have only been able to achieve 17% emission reduction. Okay, so the goal that we have set is ambitious, but it is doable. And it is going to involve taking decisive action on multiple fronts, which I'm going to speak about a little later. And the key thing to keep in mind is that the actions that we can take this decade will set the United States on the path to achieve a net zero emissions economy by 2050. We simply cannot squander opportunity this decade. It is crucial we take action. This is stuff that you all know, but worth emphasizing. Climate change impacts are already taking a huge human and financial toll on communities across the country, and these are just projected to get worse. So in recent years, we have seen record-breaking wildfires, hurricanes, heat waves, and floods devastate the country. This year alone, as of October 8, there have been 18 weather/climate related disaster events, and each of those, the economic loss was more than $1 billion. So climate change also poses significant challenge to Maine's economy. Two of Maine's largest economic sectors, tourism and fishing, are particularly susceptible to changes in climate, and you guys know this better than I. When thinking about the costs and benefits of acting on climate, we need some basis of comparison. What is the cost of not acting? So recent research is showing that with current policies, we are on track for 3 degrees Celsius of warming above current levels, which in economic terms means that the US would face economic damages from climate change equal to 1 to 3% of US GDP every year by 2100. And if you take a worst-case scenario of a 6-degree Celsius scenario with rising emissions and limited or no adaptation, the damages could even reach between 4 to 10% of US GDP per year. The South and parts of the Midwest would be the hardest hit, as would be the poorest communities and communities of color. A lot of time people talk about, but taking action on climate is just too expensive. And it is true that we will need billions of dollars of investment. But a growing body of research is coming to the conclusion that the required level of investments is just going to be about 2% of US GDP each year until 2050. And in fact, forthcoming research from WRI, which I am leading, and which we are releasing in December, shows that by 2050, the United States would actually experience net savings rather than net expenditure, with the additional clean energy investment needs outweighed by fossil fuel spending reductions. So let's switch tracks now and talk about the benefits that can accrue from climate action. And here we are sort of getting into the whole economics of climate action. So the low carbon economy can generate millions of new jobs. These jobs will be in zero carbon electricity production, zero emission vehicles and charging infrastructure, building retrofits, agriculture, forestry, just to name a few. Investments in these clean industries will also enhance US competitiveness and propel sustained growth. The United States can lead in crucial technologies like batteries, electric vehicles, and heat pumps, and it can also sort of, try to grab a market share for these cutting-edge emerging technologies like green hydrogen and direct air capture technologies, advanced nuclear technology. So a lot of economic growth can happen there. Third, climate policies can reduce air pollution and improve public health. It can also help alleviate the pollution burdens disproportionately borne by communities of color, low-income communities, and indigenous communities. The low-carbon economy can create consumer and business savings through energy efficiency and lower-cost renewable energy. And finally, modernizing the American economy to achieve net zero can just improve our quality of life, right? Think about stuff like high-speed rail, transit-oriented development. These not only reduce emissions, but also create connected, accessible, and healthier communities. So what's the size of the clean energy economy? So here I'm going to unpack the jobs narrative a little bit. Already, 3 million Americans work in clean energy, and this is data from the end of 2020. And keep in mind, 2020 was a pretty weird year. So, obviously, because of COVID, employment in the clean energy sector has come down. So at the end of 2019, it was 3.36 million. Now we are at 3 million. More Americans work in clean energy than work as middle and elementary school teachers, bankers, farmers, or real estate agents. Energy efficiency by far employs the most clean energy workers. In terms of where these jobs are located, California, Texas, New York, and Florida obviously corner a huge share of the jobs market here. But these jobs are to be found in every part of the country, and I have the Maine data, which says that at the end of 2020, Maine had about 12,000 people employed in the clean energy economy. It's about 2% of your workforce, which is pretty much, I think, the national average right now. The US clean energy economy was hit hard by COVID-19, but it is actually recovering faster than the overall economy. So between 2017 and 2019, US clean energy employment grew by 6%, which is about twice as fast as the rest of the US economy and much faster than fossil fuels. Then obviously COVID arrived and it impacted the clean energy sector severely, more so than it impacted the overall national economy. But the sector is now on track to recover faster than the overall national workforce, which just goes to show the resilience of this sector. Clean energy is also a growing economic engine for rural communities across the United States. In some rural counties, we have found that clean energy accounts for 10% of total employment. In many regions of the country, clean energy jobs are diversifying the rural economy and helping to transform areas that may otherwise struggle to attract jobs and investments, or they have been facing years of economic stagnation, and that is true of a lot of US rural communities. Earlier this year, we released a big report which looked at how federal investments in 7 areas, including renewable energy, energy efficiency, grid modernization, environmental remediation of abandoned fossil fuel sites, tree plantation in public and private lands, and wildfire risk management can create significant economic opportunities for rural counties. And that is not surprising because rural America possesses characteristics that enable it to take advantage of the opportunities provided by the low-carbon economy. Farmers, ranchers, and forest owners manage large segments of American lands that hold enormous opportunities for carbon sequestration. Rural areas are also crucial for clean energy development. 99% of all onshore wind capacity is located in rural counties. Growing share of utility-scale solar projects are located in rural counties. So what's the message here? Rural communities are crucial to building robust, equitable, and durable climate policies that harnesses the power of rural America to address climate change. This is a little bit of a sore topic for me because we have been watching in the aftermath of COVID-19 how are different governments investing their money in economic recovery. What kind of projects is the money going to? So we know that the pandemic has caused millions of jobs to be lost globally, and it has also increased inequality. And we also know that addressing climate change is an urgent challenge. But what we are finding is that too many governments are funneling money to unsustainable sectors as part of their COVID-19 recovery efforts, even though this is not the best job creator and actually will increase climate change. So recently, my WRI colleagues released a paper which analyzed studies from around the world, including the United States, and found that green investments generally create more jobs per $1 million than unsustainable investments. So they compared near-term job creation effects from clean energy versus fossil fuel, public transportation versus roads, electric vehicles versus internal combustion engine vehicles, and nature-based solutions versus oil and gas production. And this is what they found. I'm not going to read all of it. You have it up on the slide. So I just don't want to talk about, the number of jobs being created. That is important. But I think we also have to keep in mind that the quality of these jobs is also going to matter a lot. So jobs in the green economy should ensure fair wages and benefits, work security, safe working conditions, opportunities for training and advancement, the right to organize, and accessibility to all. Research is pointing out that the median hourly wages of clean energy workers in 2019 were 25% higher than the median hourly wages for workers overall in the economy, but 8% lower than those of workers in fossil fuel jobs. What does that mean, right? We know, we keep saying that the low-carbon economy is going to create millions of jobs. We also acknowledge that some jobs are going to be lost in the fossil fuel sector. Can we go to these workers in the fossil fuel industry and say that, hey, you can just become a solar technician or a wind technician, but they'll say, that job doesn't pay as much as I'm getting paid now, right? So that's a conundrum. So the US fossil fuel workers have spent decades fighting for unionization, higher wages, and better labor standards. And the clean energy industry is quite new and still evolving, and actually doing so in the context of declining worker leverage in all sectors. So we need to make sure, policymakers need to make sure that the industry avoids a race to the bottom where the falling costs of clean energy are achieved by cutting wages, reducing workplace safety or job security, or worsening working conditions. So job quality is going to become more and more important. So I already mentioned it, right, that we are going to create millions of jobs, and some jobs are going to be lost in the fossil fuel economy, including jobs in coal mining and coal power plants, oil and gas extraction in the auto sector, as we transition from ICE vehicles to electric vehicles. And this map just shows the oil and gas extraction jobs. Where are they, concentrated? And there are some counties where, more than 20% or 25% of workers are involved in, oil and gas extraction. So those counties are going to be really hard hit. What about Maine? Maine does not produce any fossil fuel within the state's borders, but nearly 60% of all the energy it consumes comes from oil and gas, and another 20% comes from biomass. So workers in the state's fossil fuel-based and biomass electricity industries will therefore experience job losses as the state transitions to generating clean electricity. So we have to make sure that there are mechanisms in place to support these workers through generous unemployment insurance, retraining, and re-employment programs. In the interest of time, I'm just going to skip this slide, but this is just recent analysis that shows somebody did an analysis of the Build Back Better agenda, which is being talked about in Congress right now, and they said that by 2030, consumers in the average household will save $500 annually. I want to talk about how we can boost America's manufacturing sector. So demand for low carbon technologies is increasing both within the United States and globally, and obviously this can boost US manufacturing and open pathways to increased American competitiveness. Just to give you an idea of the size of the industry, in 2020, the advanced energy market reached $1.4 trillion worldwide. It is bigger than pharmaceutical manufacturing now. The US market total was just $240 billion, which is about 17% of the global total. Given the broadly shared concern about economic recovery in the country, this is an ideal moment to revitalize the manufacturing sector by scaling up the production and export of low-carbon technologies. I'm going to talk about 3 areas of opportunity for Maine. One of them, and you probably know this better than I do, offshore wind energy offers Maine potential for long-term job creation and economic development. Maine has a lot of existing resources and assets that can be leveraged to support this industry. It will require clear policy signals, upgrading port infrastructure, access to capital for early stage manufacturers of wind turbine components, and obviously investment in workforce development. The second area of opportunity is buildings and energy efficiency. Maine has some of the oldest building stock in the US, and obviously older leaky homes and buildings mean more wasted heat and dollars and higher energy burden. Building heating is also reliant on oil, which is not very climate friendly, so transitioning to cleaner heating and cooling systems, including high efficiency heat pumps, is obviously going to benefit Maine's economy. And the final area of opportunity I want to talk about is production of climate-friendly building products. Maine is 90% forested and has a thriving timber industry. And Maine's forest land hold tremendous potential to sequester even more carbon and offset further emissions from other sectors of Maine's economy. So the use of carbon sequestering low-carbon building materials such as cross-laminated timber and wood fiber insulation has huge environmental and economic potential to increase economic activity in forest products industry, benefit rural economies, and lead to improved forest management. How do we get there? These are the key areas in which we really need to invest our efforts. First, we will need to produce zero carbon electricity. The Biden administration has set a goal that by 2035, all electricity has to be 100% clean. In the transportation sector, we have to replace ICE vehicles with electric vehicles in all vehicle segment, not just the light-duty vehicle. We need a lot of investment in electrical transmission infrastructure to move low-cost wind and solar power from places where they are generated to where they can be used. We need to make EV charging infrastructure ubiquitous, just like gas stations. We also need to triple federal investments in R&D and enhance natural land carbon sinks. So lot of areas which need attention at the same time. An all-of-society approach provides the best path to meet climate goals. What do we mean by that? It means that the federal government, states, cities, businesses, and civil society all play their unique roles in driving climate ambition. Actions by state to push ambition can help set the pace, while local governments have additional tools to help accelerate ambition. Businesses can play a key role in developing markets for clean technologies, both on the demand side through their purchasing power and on the supply side in providing low and no carbon solutions. Civil society, which includes universities, healthcare institutions, faith groups, cultural institutions, and others, can help educate the public and lead by example. In addition to all of this, the federal government has an important role to play in setting ambitious national standards and provide important investment in infrastructure and R&D. As cities, states, businesses, and others also move on climate and clean energy, their actions can help create additional economic and political support for greater ambition from the federal government. So I want to give the example of the shift to electric vehicles to sort of, explain what I mentioned in the previous slide about, everyone having a role to play. So states like Maine can set ambitious zero-emission vehicle policies that help create a market for EVs. Automakers will recognize the need to shift in the coming decade to stay in tune with both ambitious policies and customer demand, and so they will commit significant investments toward EVs. And those trends can then make it easier for the federal government to establish strong national requirements, creating even more momentum in the market. In the meantime, the federal infrastructure investments in EV charging can help alleviate concerns from consumers, while state and local governments can help direct the federal spending to where it will be most effective and create policies and incentives to make it easier to install chargers. I can go on, but you get the idea. These actions mutually reinforce each other, and a similar dynamic can play in other sectors of the economy. This is just talking about the shift to EVs. And that actually brings me to the end of my presentation. I would be happy to take questions later. And once again, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk a little bit later because I feel like there are so many, the all of society approach has something to offer us, and I'm excited to explore that a little bit more. Next up, I'd like to welcome Kate Dufour. Kate has worked for the Maine Municipal Association since 1995, bless her heart, and served as the director of the State and Federal Relations Department since 2017, which is charged with representing municipal interests before the Maine State Legislature. And Kate is also a member of the Hallowell City Council. Green makes it go.
Cool. Thank you. Well, first I want to thank you all for inviting me to participate in this discussion. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'd especially like to thank GrowSmart and maybe Nancy Smith for using this photo. I'm clearly wider and wiser, but still oddly charming. The other thing you need to know about me is I am wicked French. French as they come. And so if you get tired of the words that are coming out of my mouth, watch the hands. They're telling a completely different story and probably a little more interesting. So when Nancy reached out to me and said, we want MMA to participate in this particular conversation about climate change, I told Nancy, I have no idea. I'm not your girl. I don't understand climate change. But she convinced me that I know municipal government. And I'm here to talk about the role municipal governments will be playing for the next decades. It is possible, or it's likely, that the state will rely on municipal governments to address a whole host of issues: climate change, housing, economic development. And in order for those engagements to be successful, in order for communities and the state as a whole to succeed, we really have to understand what local government is, to the extent that communities or the state relies on municipalities for delivering services, how municipal services are funded, and the power of local ingenuity. And by that, I mean home rule authority. It is a very important part of all of these discussions. And once we understand how municipalities play a role, we can really engage communities in participating in incredibly successful partnerships. So I'm going to start with a little exercise. Now, I know some of you are introverts and you're probably shaking in your boots, but don't worry. I'm not going to make you pair up and talk about whatever happened in the 4th grade. But here's the rapid test. When I say the words municipal government, what do you think? Just think, you don't have to shout it out, right? I'm going to assume some of you thought of a building, town or city hall, maybe a fire department, a police department. Some of you may have thought about a park, a community center, a library. And my apologies to the men. At least one of you thought this, right? Grumpy old guy, completely disconnected to the facts of life, right? But I'm going to suggest to you that this is local government. This is municipal government. Now, this is the Hallowell City Council, and for those of you who don't know me, I am convinced the world revolves around the city of Hallowell. There's a pride of residency and pride of community there, so bear with me when I always talk about Hallowell. So this is the Hallowell City Council. The only thing that's different here is our manager is different. But if you look from the upper left corner, tic-tac-toe style, these are young people in our community who are participating in civic duty. They come to our meetings, they come to our community with different perspectives on what we do. It's wonderful. You have retired commissioner of DMR, you have a retired judge, you have a retired consultant, and you get that one weirdo at the bottom that's always ready to impart boring historical municipal knowledge. That's my role in the council, to bore everybody. But more precisely, this is community. We are community. Everyone in this room is a member of a municipality, and we are only as strong as your participation. So when it comes to demanding services from communities, this is who we are. It's us, it's me, it's you. And the decision not to participate locally comes with consequences. It does. And so in order for your voices to be heard, you need to participate. You need to let your elected officials know what's important to you and how you think we can move forward. You know, I know many people, insert evil laugh here, ha ha ha, think that I get up every morning and think to myself, who am I gonna hurt today? But that's not the intent. Every morning I get up, I get a cup of coffee, and then I figure out, how can I be better? How can I do things a little smarter? How can I engage? Because without this level of engagement, I don't know. So to the extent that you want me to make different decisions, participate. Not everybody wants to run for office, but maybe you serve on the planning board. Maybe you participate in a committee, a local committee. Maybe you show up to a meeting and say, this is what's important to us. Only when we hear from you can we figure out how to move forward. Now again, note, Hollowell, center of the universe, right here. This was a community meeting we had when we were moving forward with redevelopment of Stevens School Commons. Now, if those of you who are familiar with Stevens School, this was a property on the top of Winthrop Hill that was largely sacrificed by the state. They didn't invest in it. We had historic buildings up there, and the state just walked away from it. Matt Morrill, a local developer, said, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to make something out of it. And we had meetings, and sometimes we weren't happy. But at the end of the day, if you drive through Hollowell, that Stevens School Commons is gorgeous. It is beautiful. Thank you. I'll let Matt know. But it's economic development for us. And it's a mix of things. Our fire department is up there. There's university housing for the University of Augusta. There's for-profit, there's nonprofit, there's affordable housing. It's a combination of everything, and it's thriving. And every year, well, I'm a member of the finance committee, we can't wait to see how much revenue in the form of value Stevens School has generated. And it was done right, and it was done by us. And by us, I mean not just me, I mean everybody in this room. That is truly community. So we also have to understand that we have had a reliance on municipal governments, on all of us. All our communities have been asked over time to provide resources or services, not only for ourselves, but on behalf of the community, or behalf of the state. So when we started out as a state, when we left Massachusetts, this is basically what we were doing, right? Police, fire, EMS, public works, parks and recs, tax assessment, I know, and tax collectment, elections and general assistance. That's basically what we were doing. We were making sure that everybody at least could get along. But over time, and I realize I spelled overtime wrong. I'm so embarrassed. My mother would be so upset with me. So over time, the list of responsibilities placed on municipalities has grown. Every year, something new, animal control, maintenance of veterans' graves, what else do I have? Solid waste management. This is a biggie. This one is expensive. And the state said, here, we don't want to do it, you do it. So not only is the list of responsibilities growing, it's getting expensive and highly technical. So we are being asked, again, us, community, being asked to do all of these services, and oftentimes we don't get any revenue from the state. And that's a problem. And so when we set the stage where a certain entity is required to fund or provide services without any other funding, you're really placing some significant burden on the property taxpayers. So, but I do need to recognize this administration and the members of both the 129th and the 130th Maine State Legislature have done good things for municipal government, incredible things for municipal government. The first is they're moving revenue sharing back to 5%. So over the next 2 years, communities will receive $182 million and $210 million in revenue sharing. Again, Hollowell, back to me. What we were able to do with the school aid that came back to us, we were able to invest in roads and sidewalks, which are very important for people of Hollowell, and reduce our mill rate. So that was significant property tax relief that came to municipalities from this legislature. Local road assistance program has been there for years, which is good. State aid for K through 12 education, incredible. For the first time in decades, the state has honored its commitment to fund school aid at 55%. That is significant improvement. And we're also increasing the homestead exemption reimbursement, which was an absolute bonus to us. I mean, that budget bill was a Christmas tree, and we loved every minute of it. However, we've had some problems in the past with respect to partnerships. And the revenue sharing program, well, let me back up. I'm going to suggest that history has taught us that you have to go a little gently when you enter into partnerships with the state. And the revenue sharing program is the cornerstone of state municipal partnership. And for those of you who might not know what revenue sharing is, it's basically a program that in a year from now will require the state to share 5% of state sales and income tax with municipalities. And this program was adopted in 1971, and it was largely left untouched until we hit 2010. And then the legislature started using this program as almost an ATM machine. We need a little more. Let's go get it. And what revenue sharing does, it recognizes three very important things. We are a state that is over-reliant on property taxes to fund local government services. The second is it acknowledges that over time, the state has placed mandates, unfunded mandates, on communities. They are required to deliver services using existing resources. And finally, and this may not be universally believed in, if not for local economic development efforts, the state wouldn't be raising as much money as they're raising. We contribute. Our efforts contribute in the state's ability to raise money. So when things like this happen, it's hard. It's hard to trust. So over that 10-year period, nearly $700 million was transferred, and I told Nancy that I would keep it positive. Normally that would say rated, from municipal coffers and put into the state's coffers to support their priorities. Their priorities, not ours, but theirs. And when we're put in this type of predicament, we basically have three choices. Reduce services, and by reduce services, I mean those that are not mandated, so the services that communities really want. Two, we increase taxes, and unfortunately, we do a combination of both. We reduce the level of services, and we increase the taxes. Now, I've been advocating for a return to 5% for many, many years. And the most frustrating part is you walk up to a legislator, and you say, can you help me out? Can you support this effort to get us back to 5%? And what I was hearing, in the 2010s and 11s and 15s is, can't help you, Kate, because we have to do something about out of control local government spending. So I ask, okay, what in your budget is completely out of control? You want to know what the response is? Can anybody guess? Not my budget, not my municipality, that municipality. That mythical municipality that's using our tax dollars to buy fast cars and whatever it is. I want to find this community because we will abolish it. But that's the issue. It's never my community. My community does exactly the right thing, but there's this ability to say it's somebody else. And that doesn't work. And when you have a program, when you have a partnership where one partner can say, you must provide, but I'm going to take resources from you, it doesn't work. It makes entering into partnerships in the future a little scary, and it really does, reduce the appetite for engagement. So that's one of the issues. I mean, we're willing to trust, we're willing to move forward, but that is really an issue. Trust is a very important issue. Now, I know everybody knows how municipal services are funded, but it warrants repeating because of this over-reliance on property taxes. So in 2019, this is statewide projected revenues, communities received 56% of their revenue from property taxes. That's how we were funding municipal government. That's a lot of money coming to fund municipal services, some desired, some mandated. When you look at our expenditures, this is the interesting chart. This is the frustrating chart, where since we've gone from largely municipal school districts to RSUs, municipalities, that entity that's collecting the taxes, has lost control over school spending. We never had it really over county spending. So when you look at that, 51% of every dollar we spend is out of our control. Somebody else needs it, and we are required by state statute to provide that. And so when you look at your mill rate and you look at the $5 billion municipalities are raising, please remember we are funding schools, we are funding counties, and we're funding mandated services. So there's really not a lot left for municipalities. You know, that library, that community center, investment in a road development improvement program always goes by the wayside because there are so many people in line. So, I promised Nancy I'd be positive. I said, but despite the raids, transfers, the mandates, the not honoring your commitments, municipal government succeeds. We succeed because, why? All of us, we're the most awesome form of government, plain and simple. We are closest to the people, we are involved, we're largely nonpartisan, and we get things done. I mean, we're not limelight kind of people. We get things done. We put our heads down and we get things done. So I asked my team at MMA to just go through some newspapers and, pull out some highlights. And I got a ton of them. I mean, it was a good experience for me and my team to see that, the media is acknowledging good work that municipalities are doing. Towns team up to establish municipal broadband. Why? It's this right thing to do, and it's what we need. What else do I have there? The town of Hope hopes that infrastructure will help. Because why? They have a vision. They can get it done. Firefighters dreamed up and built an Orono training facility. This has been an issue for communities for years. Orono and 2 other communities said, hey, we'll design something that works for us. This is a cool one. I finally found one that was somewhat related to this subject matter, which is climate change. And there you have a high school kid who's involved and wants to give the town a blueprint of where to move forward in the future. That's pretty cool. South Portland Skate Park, this was the neatest thing. I was at the first meeting. It really feels amazing. Freshman in college when this started. He's now on the council. That is incredible. And then finally, COVID response team. Municipalities had to do this in case a public works department went down. And why did they do it? Because they needed an action plan. They needed to make certain that they could move forward. So where do we go? Oh, and there's a couple more examples here. I mean, I talk too much anyway. So where do we go from now? Or now, where do we go now? Now you have Axl Rose running through your head if you were a child of the 80s, and you're very welcome for that. So where do we go? In order for communities to help implement climate change, affordable housing, whatever it is we're being called on, we have to build strong partnerships with all the entities, with states. 10 minutes. Whew. All right, so we got to build all the strong memberships, and we have to understand that it took some time to get where we are. Pick the subject matter: climate change, affordable housing, economic development. It took some time to get here, so it's going to take some time to get out. This is not a magical, here's the state's going to tell us what to do, and all the problems will be resolved. So it takes time. And I know there is, or it's my perception, of a love-hate relationship with local control and home rule. I know at times local control and home rule is fantastic when it's supporting your own priorities and ideologies. But when home rule might be supportive of something that you don't quite agree with, all of a sudden it needs to be limited. And the term that we use often when we want to raise concern with local control and home rule is patchwork quilt. But I would suggest to you that when you take random pieces of fabric, you sew them together into these beautiful, warm quilts that are unique, you have something there. That is a positive. That is community. A bunch of different people with a bunch of different perspectives getting together and figuring things out. So there's a community for each of us. And my new boss, Kathy Conlow, is a fan of saying the following. I'll use different communities, but Biddeford, because Biddeford is Biddeford, a service center community, Alfred can be Alfred. So if it wasn't for Biddeford's and Bangor's and Portland's, our bedrooms communities couldn't be their bedroom communities. So there is value in having different communities with different objectives because there's a community for all of us. Now, here are some recommendations. I tried to be clever, but I'm not very clever. So here's what I think we do. We build, assess, support, and evaluate. First is we have to continue to build strong relationships, trusted relationships, where one member of a partnership doesn't have more authority over another. That's how you do it. Second, we need to assess which entity is more appropriate for providing a service. I think sometimes the default is municipal because they can tell us what to do. But maybe it's not municipal. Maybe it's state. Maybe it's a regional organization. Maybe it's a nonprofit. But we really have to assess who has the skills necessary to provide that. We need to honor Maine's home rule history and encourage local ingenuity. That's how things get done. They get done when you empower communities to do what they need to do. And that also comes with assistance, technical assistance and financial assistance. And Jeff Levine has heard me say this 100 times. When the state abolished the state planning office, we headed in a wrong direction. Municipalities were left on an island and told you will continue to do X, Y, and Z, but we're not helping you anymore. That's a problem. So we need that level of investment. If you anticipate or expect municipalities to be part of the solution, which we want to be, we need assistance, we need guidance, we need finances. And finally, we need to evaluate policies and programs to ensure they're meeting end goals. To us, it feels like each legislature, somebody has a brand new idea. So the idea that somebody had 4 years ago stays on the book, while more and more ideas and programs are adopted and municipalities have to implement them. So we need to evaluate. We need to say, okay, is this program working anymore? And if it's not, it's okay, because we can amend, we can correct, we can move forward. It serves no purpose to continue to invest time and resources in programs that aren't working. And it's okay to admit we've made mistakes. Nobody gets everything right the first time. So that, I would say, is an important part to ensure that we are meeting all of the intended goals. So that is my presentation, and I look forward to the discussion.
So the three of us are gonna be on stage. I'm gonna invite a reflection, maybe from each speaker about what they heard the other one say. And then we're going to open it up for questions from our Zoom and satellite offices and satellite locations. So we'll be using our various tech support and board members to bring questions up. Is this one on yet? Yes, yes, look at that. Also, my 4-year-old told me I looked like a princess today. And then AV Technics just told me I was winning because I had pockets. So I feel like I'm nailing it. And like the rest of the day, it's fine. It's just gonna be fine. I also feel like oh goodness, I owe Davis Shree an apology for mispronouncing her first name.
No worries.
But I thought we could start with you.
Sure.
I'm so excited to talk more about all of the great sort of large and exciting systems and research work that you've been doing. But I'm also wondering if you just have a response to what you heard shared from Kate as we bring you right down all the way into our main weeds. And then Kate, I'd invite a response to what you heard as well. And then we'll see if there's additional questions and we'll go from there.
Sure. I have to admit, and I'm being totally honest here, I did feel a little bit depressed hearing about all the challenges that municipal governments face in terms of having the right financial resources, the right level of staffing capacity, and with the right tools in the toolbox. Kate's presentation just brought home to me, municipal government is where, the rubber meets the road, right? This is where we want to see action, where stuff gets done. And when things don't happen as you're hoping them to be, it can get very frustrating. So definitely, while municipal governments have a big role to play in the climate change game, I do think it is incumbent upon the federal government and state governments to make sure that they are being the right partners and being collaborative and providing the financial and technical tools to municipal governments. So that would be, my reflection on Kate's presentation.
Thank you.
I wouldn't be too depressed. I think, I really do think we're moving in the right direction where most interested parties or impacted parties agree that there is a role for municipal government, but that there is a requirement that the state step up and help communities.
Yeah.
So I think we're headed in the right direction on so many issues, advancement of these state priorities, but a recognition that the state is going to have to step up. And with respect to your presentation, at first, I sat in the back, I'm like, what am I going to talk about? But your conclusion came to basically my frustration, which is we all have to be a part of this, but we all have to contribute and not rely singly on one individual or entity to resolve when it comes to climate change, it's not just a statewide, it's a global issue. And you can't rely on the city of Hollowell. I wonder is somebody keeping tabs on how many times I've said Hollowell to resolve all these issues?
Thank you. I want to, I'm holding some space in case we have questions coming in. Does anyone here have a question? I'm sorry, now this thing's over here. Oh, Sue Inches, yes. And then we can go to John next.
My
Yes.
mask so you can actually hear me. Thank you to our presenters, and I just want to say before my question how much I appreciate the role of communities, because I think that's going to be the key to our future. But my question is on something completely different, which is, basically, I want to know about the World Resources Institute and corporate accountability. Because while we're talking about great policies, both here and in Glasgow, while lots of people are doing great innovative research, corporations are extracting more and more oil and gas. So that's, to me, the elephant in the room. And I'm just wondering what the World Resources Institute has to say or is doing about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I have to admit that it is probably above my pay grade to comment on everything, that World Resources Institute, the senior management decisions on corporate accountability. But having said that, I would mention that we have a business division, business center within the World Resources Institute, where we actually bring together different corporations and try to work with them, first of all, to reduce their own carbon footprint, and then to see how they can up the game even more and sort of move the needle on reducing carbon emissions in different sectors of the economy. So there's a business center, and there are projects that are being worked on by different researchers. I'm part of the WRI US climate team, but focusing on the United States. I'm part of the US team. I would like to hope that the World Resources Institute is aware of this issue. Corporations and the private sector plays a big role, and obviously they need to clean up their act, and I'm hoping that my employer is working on it.
Thank you.
Tara, we have two from virtual participants, and Rachel will raise their question. Thank you.
Try again.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Yes. So this question comes from Mary Ann, and it's directed at Kate. So Kate, do you think solutions for specific issues, such as affordable housing, can be addressed on their own, or that multiple related issues and their connections should be addressed in composite with or a combination, I believe, with a package of which partners are in the lead and how costs and decision making will be shared? So to paraphrase, do you think solutions for specific issues can be addressed on their own, or should they be in collaboration?
I think the answer is yes and no. I think there are clearly cross sections when you talk about economy and you talk about climate change and you talk about affordability. I mean, you can build better homes, better apartment buildings that address these issues. So you're not contributing anymore to a problem of climate change or economic development while doing those. But I think there's a conversation for affordable housing that has to take place and might go down a different path. There's a different conversation about economic development as well as climate change. But at some point, they're going to cross. And I think if we're cognizant of what everyone else is doing, we can start addressing those issues.
Thank you very much. And we have one more from Maggie. Hearing the scope of the climate change work and opportunity and the role and challenges facing municipalities, it seems like our biggest area of opportunity is around engagement of people at the local level. Solutions will need widespread community knowledge of and support. What are some ideas for doing this? Who is leading this work that people can plug into?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to buy you guys some time. But one of the things that I was thinking about when you were presenting, Kate, and what we talked about at the beginning of the week was how Maine municipal government is volunteers. Or like everybody is a volunteer. Maybe there's some stipends. There's very few career politicians in Maine, which I think is like it's special. It's a challenge because it means every time we have new elected officials, we have to get them all the way up to speed, right? And we lose some institutional knowledge with changeover in term limits. But as a whole, it's a really refreshing way to think about governance. But it doesn't let the individual off the hook, right? Like it demands that we show up at our town meetings. And so I think an important question for all of us is accessibility. And who are not at those meetings, and how can we bring them in? Is it parents that have something going on at that time and they just can't tune in? Is it transportation challenges? Is it a sense of not feeling welcomed? Is it poor communications on the, when I moved to the town I live in now, they had a terrible website and I could not even figure out when meetings happened. They have since figured that out. But, like looking at the barriers to participation really honestly and from perspectives other than your own, I think is something we can all bring home and bring up as well.
So I think, so my response will be twofold. The first is, I call them pandemic silver linings. And one of the silver linings is communities were finally, after decades of begging for the authority to conduct remote meetings. We could conduct our meetings remotely. That opened up access. People who were trying to get a kid from school and shoving mac and cheese in their mouth could put on the Zoom meeting and kind of half pay attention. And in some communities, small and large, the public participation rate exceeded all expectations. So technology has helped address some of those issues. I think we also have a role as municipal officials to acknowledge that we need to do a little better about outreach. And we need to be, we're not perfect. We need to be more welcoming. We need to do some outreach. And, we need people to provide us the feedback that we need to make good decisions. And so that's hard. And I know sometimes it's intimidating, but, I don't want anybody to think that they can't come to any town or city council or any town meeting and say whatever they want to say. It's hard. It's sometimes embarrassing. Maybe you feel stupid, but no thought is stupid. No suggestion is stupid. And we need, as elected officials, to build environments that make people comfortable communicating with us without getting, the chips on the shoulders. I mean, we're all moving forward in the same direction. So I think we have a role in playing to do that. The other comment that I would make is the ARPA, so the American Rescue Plan, and the millions of dollars communities statewide are going to receive. I'm very excited about this because I think it provides communities an opportunity to invest regionally, to do big programs, and maybe take the fear and stigma out of working together out of the process. So I'm Pollyanna, I mean, me of all people, Pollyanna, but I think I'm hoping this is a jumping point for future collaboration, regional investment, because I think this is part of where we need to go as a society.
Yeah.
I will just add, no, I agree with everything that you have said, Kate. And I would just note that, community engagement and encouraging everyone to participate in the process is really important. It's a very unsexy topic, right? But it is so key, and especially when we are talking about the interconnected problems of climate change, it touches upon everything, right? From where you live, affordable housing, to how you move, whether you have access to public transit, right? Whether your building is, leaking energy, right? And you're paying so much of your income just towards electricity bill, right? So having an open channel of communication with your local government officials, that is really going to be key. One of the things I will also note is that I'm going to be positive, when the legislations that are being currently debated in Congress, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which includes historic level of investments in climate-friendly infrastructure, and the bigger spending package, which is called the Build Back Better, which has a lot of climate provisions, it is going to funnel a lot of money to states and cities, right? So ideally, it would be really key for states and cities and the people living there to figure out how they best want to spend that money. What is the local priority there? Maybe for a town in Maine, they don't want to expand their road. Maybe they want to invest in public transit, and they should have that, decision-making power to see how that money can be channeled towards that. So those are really going to be critical issues in the coming year.
Yeah, I'd love to sort of bring us back into the climate as a concept, and thinking about we're here today to talk about turning climate action into economic opportunity. And you've both spoken about the ARPA, sort of the potential of that. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about what could that actually look like in Maine? Like, I don't know, Kate, you're kind of on the front edge of it a little bit. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? How can we intersect with that at the different levels with the all of society approach where we all have different roles to play in the work?
Yeah, I think, credit is due to the Office of Innovation in the Future. I mean, they have been incredible partners. They have reached out to communities. And I think one of the things we're seeing is, when you talk about climate change, it's just, you want to just get into a little fetal ball because I don't know what it is, right? And so it's scary. It seems incredibly frightening. And to the extent that, and again, Hannah's shop is doing a really good job of saying climate change isn't, tearing down every building and building something. It's upsizing a culvert. It's changing to LED lights. It's doing small incremental change that, provided that we're each moving forward, we're not going to slide back. And so I think one of the things we need to do and work on is make climate change accessible to everybody, that you can participate and it's really easy. And we had talked about, we like competition, so we had thought about if the state could develop a, whatever you want to call it. So if your community does X, you get 10 points. And then, you start challenging, it's just like Augusta, Hollowell just got 100 points. What are you going to do? I think that
gamification.
that competition without, without finances, but just encouragement. I think we need to employ different mechanisms for motivating people.
That's great. Do you have anything you want to
Yeah, I mean, you asked about, how it can impact Maine. I can just touch on few key provisions that are included in the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better Act. So they have, if passed, it's going to completely overhaul the power sector. So it contains a lot of tax credits for incentivizing zero carbon electricity production. So it will benefit Maine, especially the Maine wind industry. It has $7.5 billion, I think. I hope I'm correct. Anyway, a lot of money in electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Some of it will come to Maine. It has investments in electric school bus. So there is this intention that we need to electrify, right, our transportation system, not just the passenger cars that we drive, but public transit, school buses. Right. So there is significant money in electrifying school buses. So these are all changes that you can see in Maine, which can improve public health, which can improve the environment and reduce emissions. So tons of climate provisions, we just needed to pass.
Thank you. So we're going to do, I think, yes. So we'll do John and then Carl, and then we'll do Philip.
So we got about 4 in the audience and 2
What was that?
remote.
Oh, it's just a pen, you guys. It's just a pen.
Good morning. Thanks for presentations. I'm on the council in my small coastal community, Kate, so I love your energy for Hollowell and municipal government. It is where everything happens. As we're trying to address community resident responses of what are we going to do for climate change, what are we doing for this, what are we doing for that, I'm finding that I'd love to hear suggestions of how we turn the roadblock of home rule and communities sort of operating in silos on its head and use it to empower local resident groups to come forward. Because I'm finding, I'm still bumping into it, that we're trying to do regional planning and get activities going, and it's like, well, where are you getting your money from? Because I want to know where I'm going to get my money from, and it's too much of a silo. So how do we come forward with that? Our town government, 68% of our taxpayer bill goes to education. Another 11 to 15% goes for those mandates from the state. So the The town where I live, we have control over 11% of the taxpayer's bill. So we don't have a lot of opportunity to do something without immediately hitting the property tax. And yet we have lots of residents coming forward saying, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? And so regional planning has to be it. What are some successes that you're seeing with small communities getting around that?
I think some of it is when we talk regional, and I think there are gaps across the state, but there are regional entities that are doing a really good job because their communities trust them. So you take, for example, a Greater Portland COG, very well trusted by the member communities, and so that works. They have an opportunity to help engage or move priorities forward. I think NMDC is involved very, very proactive with communities up in Aroostook County. In some cases, it's actually the county that is a good entity for bringing communities together and leaders together. So, but there are gaps and there are voids, and I think that in part gets to the technical assistance. How do we do this? And I know we're focused on climate change, and I've been working on the Housing Commission, but how do we get around the NIMBYism? How do we encourage or educate the residents of our community that affordable is not a bad word? It's good, it's diversity. So I share your frustration. I mean, it's just, sometimes we think, a Saturday meeting with some food might bring the right people to a meeting, but we need somebody to help guide us. What are the tools that we can, employ in order to generate that community involvement? I think this is pretty blunt, but I think there's almost a dire warning. If we don't get our trip together, somebody's going to get it together for us, and we're not going to like it. And so I think that is kind of an encouragement. It's a big stick, but I feel your pain.
And I don't want to minimize. I think this is the challenge of our time, right? And if it were easy, we would have figured it out by now. But one of the things I want to pull on is from David Shree's presentation, the sort of hope-based approach can be really powerful too. So I think some people respond to the stick, which is like, if we don't get ahead of this market, if we don't set our own ordinances, if we don't solve some of these challenges, or at least put our intention to solve some of these challenges out, then we're going to be steamrolled over by the greater forces of the state and the globe and the capitalism. So that's one way of like positing how and why we need to act and act fast, and why doing nothing is not an option, right? Because a lot of people say they're resistant to change, but really they don't acknowledge that to even maintain where you are now, you have to keep rolling, right? But also I think hope-based and like quality of life-based communications can be really effective. So for me, the reason I'm active in the climate work is because I am looking forward to sharing a cleaner and brighter future with all of you. A healthier air and better, safer jobs and quieter cars and more trees. And there's so much to look forward to. The climate future is bright. And so I think really focusing on how our communities can benefit from this transitional moment can be a really powerful messaging as well. And also, like I know where John lives, and there's challenges of messenger and message, right? And so sometimes we are not the best messenger to connect with audiences that are coming from a different place than us. And so thinking about your shared values, who might be able to have a chat with this human, I can't reach them. Someone else in the community might be a more effective messenger to challenge them on something that is underlying their oppositional attitude in this moment. Did you have anything you wanted to offer them? Okay. Maybe Carl and then Rachel? Oh, Philip. Oh, okay.
All right, so we're going to start with Carl.
Hi, my name is Carl Epic. I'm a board member here, GrowSmart Maine. And when we were putting together this idea for this program, one of the big issues, and Dr. Saha, you mentioned it, was the rural. The rurals have to be a big part of this. And we've kind of touched on it, Kate, with, of course, the municipalities. But the question I had, which really plays off what we've just been talking about, is how do we, with what, 400 and something rural community, we have 470 total municipalities in the state. So let's call it 467, 65 municipalities that are rural. What is the approach? What are the approaches to start with at the rural level? Because I'm thinking, I work in transportation planning, and giving up a truck that goes long distance and is reliant on fuels that we have today and not just electric, that by itself is a big stumbling block to get over with. And granted, there's electric trucks coming next spring. That's just broadly, where is the low-hanging fruit to work on this problem with the rural municipalities?
Yeah, I think for rural communities, I think you have to sort of identify approaches that are really sort of central to their lives. So basically, their buildings. Energy efficiency can be a huge growth area, because if you can demonstrate to them, right, that if you invest in weatherization strategies, if you do insulation and fix all those things, then it is actually going to save you money, and you can demonstrate that. I think rather than relying on how you are part of the climate solution and what you do is actually going to help address the climate change, probably that is not the right approach I would take. I would sort of start by pointing out the different benefits that can accrue to rural households and businesses if they do certain things. So I think that would be my messaging strategy there.
Questions from the online community as well. And in the interest of time, I'm going to try and consolidate them a bit. The themes that I'm seeing are engagement and coordination. And so we'll start with engagement, and the questions basically revolved around how can we engage younger people, seeing some of the great comments earlier, but also that are there any good models for encouraging engagement when there's no local newspaper and regional ones aren't necessarily read. So that's one theme. The second theme that I'm seeing is more about coordination between municipalities and between municipalities in the state.
Maybe I can sort of talk about the municipality and the state coordination issue first. And I think it's going to be really important that municipalities and states are pulling in the same direction and not undercutting each other's work. And I'm not talking about Maine, but just in general, what we are seeing across the country. There can be growing rifts between what some progressive municipalities want, and sometimes the states will come and tell them, no, you can't do that. So we have seen instances where some municipalities in Massachusetts and California, Arizona, they wanted to ban natural gas connection for new constructions. And I think in Arizona, the state said, no, you can't do that, and passed a legislation overriding municipal government ability to do that. So I guess long story short, what I'm trying to say is that making sure that municipalities and states are aligned in moving towards the climate goals is going to be really key. And Maine has set very aggressive climate goals. So I'm really hoping that this is not going to be an area of confrontation, but the state of Maine and local governments will be working together. Kate, you have anything to add?
I think with respect to engaging a younger audience, I think it's the schools. I mean, kids are incredible. I mean, they get on something and they won't let it go. I mean, it's like, mommy, 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 mommy. I mean, I don't have kids. Nobody wants a mini-me running around, but I do have a niece. So, I mean, they're incredible. They're thoughtful. And the thing that kids can do is get to grandparents. And once the grandchild believes in something, you better believe Grammy and Mame and Pape are behind. And so I think it almost addresses some of the concerns that we raised with respect to untapped populations within our community. If the grandchild is telling grandma about how important this particularly is, I can guarantee you're going to start having those conversations. So I would say the schools, getting into the schools and getting kids engaged. It gets back to the competition of, you can make it a competition. I convinced my parents to go to different types of light bulbs. I got 6 bunnies. Now I get a book, So I think the school is the issue. But I don't remember the second question because I talk too much.
That was the coordination. How can states and municipal governments coordinate more?
I think we have the right platform now with the Office of Policy and Innovation. I think that group is doing an excellent job. The programs they're designing, which encourage more regional development, I think works. We have somebody we can trust, somebody who's going to help us get there. And I think that's the right combination for ensuring future success in that type of relationship. So the issue is, every 4 years we risk a new administration, and will there be that continuity? But right now it feels to me anyway, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, we have the right ingredients in the bowl of partnership, of support, of regionalization.
I just want to add a little bit about youth engagement. I think part of the challenge, and a lot of times the place that question comes from, is wanting youth to engage in our old people systems. And I think it's really important to let youth design their own systems and ways to engage. Because if they show up at a meeting and they don't follow Robert's rules and we get grumpy with them, are they gonna come back? No, they're not. So I think there's a lot of ageism actually in the environmental movement in Maine. I see it in a lot of our established networks. I see it in a lot of our biggest environmental organizations. They want people to play their game. They want young people to come to their board meetings. They're unwilling to think differently about what young people bring and how you need to accommodate them. And it's not that young people can't do what anyone else can do. They have just as much ability. They just don't want to continue playing in our outdated systems. So that's also very true for a lot of people of color and people who come from different backgrounds. We want them to play in our sandbox, but we have built a sandbox that excludes them. So when we think about youth engagement, we need to look outside of existing structures. There is some very strong youth climate work happening in Maine. The Maine Youth, Scott, was it? Thank you, Maine Youth Climate Justice. Also Maine Climate Action Now, which Scott Vaughn is very involved with. Those have a lot of youth representation. The Maine Environmental Education Association and the Nature-Based Education Consortium are both networks in Maine that are pushing hard to move climate into schools. They've already created a bunch of new friends at the Department of Education just in the last year. We've attracted a lot of national funding for nature-based education in Maine, which all has a climate edge to it. So it's coming, but just don't expect young people to show up in your boring meetings. What's there for them? If you're not gonna make it interesting for them, they're not gonna show up. So we need to be thoughtful about what made sense to us when we were in our 20s, and we need to be working to connect actively across the generations to work, to all pull the to pull the oars in the boat. I think are we done? I'm getting clapping signals from, we are done. Thank you. I did not mean to take the last word from our amazing presenters. So thank you again for coming and presenting.
The list of officers, I don't have the list in front of me right now, sorry.
From memory, we have Becca Casey as chair, Ethan Boxer-Macumber as, thank you, vice chair, Tom Rumpf, who's currently in Auburn, as treasurer, and Maggie Fleming, who's at the Sydney location, as secretary. That is the slate of officers. Is there a second? Tyler Kidder seconds. Thank you. I hear others in the room. Further discussion? Then again, all those in favor in the room, please raise your hands. Virtually, put it in the chat. And Emily is reporting again, thumbs up, and I will capture from the slate. We have Machias is a yes, and Tom Rumpf reports the group with AvCog is a yes as well. So again, I'll continue to track this and let you know if things don't go well, but apparently we have our new slate of officers, and thank you, and welcome to Tammy and Galen. Thank you, David, for doing the nominations remotely. That
You're
was
welcome.
That was awesome.
Signing off.
All right. I'm going to look to Ben because I believe we're ready for the next portion of the agenda, and I'll step down and again just giggle as I leave the stage with my flowers. Thank you.
All right, so first I'd like to thank the new board members for joining the board, as well as the new officers of GrowSmart Maine. Thank you very much for agreeing and working to continue the efforts of this organization. The next portion of the program is really one of my favorites. I think this has become a tradition that a lot of folks look forward to. This is the 4th annual GrowSmart Awards. We will be going to Ethan Boxer-Macumber for this with a brief introduction, but I will also be sharing a video presentation of the award winners and a brief description of their projects and programs. And I think we can go to that now.
Was that my cue, Ben? Hey.
Hello, Ethan.
Hi,
Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ethan Boxer-Macumber. I'm a member of the GrowSmart Board of Directors, and I'm here to welcome you to our main Smart Growth Awards segment of today's summit. You know, when you open your local newspapers these days, there's all too often reason to find deep concern. We read about the continued loss of forest and fields to low-density, auto-oriented development, social and economic inequities, and shortage of quality, affordable housing, and the current and future impacts of climate change. And so, you know, all of us are here today because of our collective concern about these challenges. It's what brings us together as a statewide smart growth community. And we're all looking for solutions. We're all searching for a better path forward. And because it's never wise to try to engineer solutions to problems in a vacuum, we think it's important to take note of and hopefully learn from the tangible proactive actions that are already being taken across Maine. And that was really the impetus for the creation of this awards program now in its 4th year, to shine light on the exemplary smart growth professionals and plans and projects that are happening right across our state. This year, we're going to be honoring 4, and I mean this, truly inspirational people, plans, and projects from across Maine. I hope you'll devote your attention to this video. I think if you're like me, you're going to find a lot of hope and more importantly, inspiration in the stories in this video. So thanks for watching, and here we go.
Welcome to the 4th Annual Maine Smart Growth Awards, a program of GrowSmart Maine.
This year's 4 award winners are being revealed here today at the 2021 GrowSmart Maine Annual Summit. Thank you all for being here with us.
But before we get started, here's some introductory remarks from GrowSmart Maine's Executive Director, Nancy Smith.
I'm Nancy Smith, Executive Director of GrowSmart Maine. Smart growth is a set of land use principles designed to allow your community to welcome and accommodate growth where it makes sense for the long term. But smart growth is so much more than land use because of the impact it has on aspects of our everyday life. It's about housing and transportation choices. It's about access to open space and fresh foods while still having economic growth. It's about bringing broadband to your community without creating sprawl that destroys the quality of life and the quality of place that defines Maine. I'm really proud of the work that GrowSmart Maine has done since 2004. And as part of that, we have our Maine Smart Growth Awards. This is an opportunity to recognize the people, places, and plans that show the value smart growth brings to communities from across our state. We're grateful to our panel of distinguished judges who determined this year's award winners. They are Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission Director Paul Schumacher, retired economist Chuck Lawton, CEI Chief Executive Officer Betsy Beeman, and the Nature Conservancy's Director of Government Relations and Climate Policy, Rob Wood. Our judges evaluated nominations submitted from across Maine using criteria that included mixed use, compact design, and placemaking, housing opportunity and choice, transportation choice and walkable communities, preservation of open space, community transformation, climate change resilience, and public engagement.
Thank you, Nancy. All of us in attendance here share common hopes and fears for the future. Across Maine, we are keenly focused on challenges: social and economic injustice, escalating housing costs, sprawl, climate change, challenges that threaten the quality of life that define our Maine communities. We hope that you will find inspiration in the stories behind the people, projects, and plans that we proudly honor here today.
The planning challenges of our times can be a particular challenge to smaller rural communities, and these places may feel a lack of resources and capacity to make meaningful action. Some rural communities have shown us what can be achieved when we band together to organize towards sustainable community outcomes. Our first awardee is a shining example of one such banding together in a rural town. CB, the Center for an Ecology-Based Economy, Outstanding Community Development Initiatives. The Center for Ecology-Based Economy is a nonprofit organization based in Norway, Maine. CB's mission is to engage the community in addressing the climate emergency. They organize, educate, take direct action, and implement practical ecological solutions for a just transition to a thriving, regenerative economy.
Yeah, hi, I'm Scott Vlan, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for an Ecology-Based Economy here in Norway, Maine, and I'm standing here today in our lovely food forest. Our mission is really to engage the community in working for climate justice, simultaneously trying to transition this area into a more resilient community and to help do our part as part of lots of networks to restore the planet and beat back climate change. We're trying to make sure that that transition to a post-carbon future is just and equitable and engages as many people as possible and especially supports the people that are suffering the most from climate change and have done the least to cause it.
In its short history, CB has launched an impressive array of direct action initiatives such as Spoke Folks, a worker cooperative that hauls trash, recycling, and food waste by bicycle while working to educate customers about waste reduction and composting. Local food programs, such as an edible Main Street project, community gardens, and a community food forest. A Norway-based bike share program, providing convenient, low-cost bicycle access and promoting cycling as an alternative for in-town travel. Solar electric initiatives, such as the planning of the Community Solar Cooperative, as well as the ongoing expansion of a network of free EV charging stations across the region, which are successfully reducing barriers to electric vehicle ownership.
One of our first collaborations was with Revision Energy, getting some people signed up for a community solar farm, and as a gift they gave us an electric vehicle charger. And we had no idea what to even do with this thing, and there was no electric vehicles, so we talked to our town, and they were amenable to hosting this charger. And as we got more electric vehicles in town, we got some funding to put in more chargers. We've really seen electric vehicles grow in this town. We talked to all the local municipalities to see who would host chargers, and in some cases it was a town, in some cases it was a private enterprise. So we've been able to build this charging network, and it's all free charging, level 2 charging, which has really, I think, given people confidence to adopt electric vehicles. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing with charging infrastructure in cars. It has been something that has sparked this transition and has given people the confidence that they can drive around the Oxford Hills in an electric vehicle and have adequate charging.
Looking to the future, CB is working with community partners laying plans to develop cooperative housing that's intergenerational, permanent, and affordable. Increasingly, CB finds itself working not only on these direct action initiatives, but also in policy and advocacy work at the local, state, and federal level.
We also work in policy, and especially in coalition, so sometimes, like when we tried to do community solar, we didn't have the policy that would make that work, so we stopped. We went to work in coalition with NRCM and others in the state to change solar policy, so now we can enact the kind of projects that we want. So we kind of go back and forth between working on policy, statewide work, and then trying to implement things locally to build community resilience here.
GrowSmart Maine commends the work that CB has done and continues to do to advance smart growth principles and create a more sustainable and resilient future for the Norway region. We therefore are proud to present CB with this 2021 Maine Smart Growth Award.
Wow, it's so encouraging to see all of the great work that CB is doing in the Oxford Hills region.
And it's not just rural Maine where we see these communities taking smart growth into their own hands.
No, in Maine cities, the later half of the last century saw massive urban disinvestment, which had a particularly devastating effect on marginalized communities.
In the 21st century, Maine is experiencing significant urban reinvestment, and this offers great promise for the future, but cities and towns have to grapple with how to ensure that reinvestment reaches all community members, regardless of cultural heritage or economic status.
Our next awardee has responded to that challenge with an ambitious plan that has social and economic justice at its core.
The City of Lewiston, Community Concepts, and Choice Neighborhood Partners. Choice Neighborhood Transformation Plan. In recent years, the City of Lewiston has seen significant economic investment into its downtown and mill districts, marking an exciting turning point in the city's economic development. However, just a few blocks away, there is Lewiston's Tree Streets neighborhood, one of the poorest and most distressed neighborhoods in the state. Regrettably, the Tree Streets have yet to see the same sort of reinvestment as other parts of the city.
I'm Misty Parker. I'm the Economic Development Manager with the City of Lewiston, Maine. Over the years, due to loss of jobs with manufacturing and the mills closing down, increase in poverty rates, and also just a transition of the housing from a lot of family-owned buildings to predominantly income-producing buildings. We experienced a lack of maintenance, deteriorating buildings, and especially due to the age of them, some significant health issues. While Maine is actually getting older and is one of the oldest states in the nation, Lewiston's getting younger. We have a lot of youth here, and they're predominantly living in the downtown area, which is fantastic for the city, fantastic for the state. But due to the distressed nature of the buildings that they're living in, we have significantly high rates of childhood lead poisoning.
Responding to these challenges, the City of Lewiston and the nonprofit Community Concepts facilitated a robust community process with multiple community partners in the development of a comprehensive neighborhood transformation plan named Growing Our Tree Streets.
And so that led us to HUD's Choice Neighborhood program. We have our Choice Neighborhoods Transformation Plan we developed with over 400 residents that focuses on not just the housing, but the people who live in that housing and how they can improve educational outcomes for their family, income outcomes, health outcomes, and really achieve the goals that they have for themselves and their family.
Growing Our Tree Streets lays out plans to systematically redevelop each and every pre-1950 distressed housing unit to achieve an entirely lead-free Tree Streets neighborhood. To get this started, over the next 5 years, the plan calls for the redevelopment of 3 initial replacement sites strategically located within the study area.
So we have strategies for our first initial housing developments to replace about 92 distressed housing units with 185 new housing units. And we're planning to do those in a way that'll catalyze other development around them.
Site 1 on Pine Street at Kennedy Park will create 2 mixed-use and mixed-income buildings providing 71 market and affordable apartments. And it will house a community food center featuring a commercial kitchen for local startups. Site 2 is made up of almost an entire block bound by Pine, Walnut, and Pierce Streets. This project will create 74 units of mixed-income housing in multiple buildings in a lower density arrangement featuring larger 3- and 4-bedroom units. Site 3 on Ash Street will feature 40 1-, 2-, and 3-bedroom units in a modern townhouse style. Already, the Growing Our Tree Streets plan has helped to inspire other private investment in the study area, including Gavro Place, 35 units of workforce housing by Avesta Housing and Community Concepts that's currently under construction on Pine Street, as well as 2 new buildings being developed by the Raisop Cooperative at Blake and Shawmut Streets, featuring 2 9-unit buildings and slated to start construction next year. But Growing Our Tree Streets doesn't stop there.
We also have plans for expanding childcare, doing a community food center, improving safety in the neighborhood, as well as activities for youth and improving health access for residents here. We really focused on just keeping the building patterns consistent with those historical good building patterns that created the walkable neighborhood it is today, and building on it to be a neighborhood of the future.
The Growing Our Tree Streets plan demonstrates the enormous power of public-private partnerships to tackle community challenges and better the lives of residents. We are therefore proud to present the City of Lewiston, Community Concepts, and Community Partners with this 2021 Maine Smart Growth Award.
Such an inspiring story from Lewiston.
And it really shows the power and value of good community planning.
The planning profession is absolutely critical to shaping a better future for Maine. We're lucky to have so many great land use planners across Maine doing incredible work.
Our next awardee is probably the most accomplished and well-known planner in Maine's history. He's been referred to by his peers as the father of planning in Maine, and his work has had far-reaching and transformative effects on our state. Maine planner Evan Rickert, Lifetime Achievement Award. Since the early 1970s, Evan Rickert has worked across Maine as a planning director and consultant, including 8 years as director of the State Planning Office and later as planner to the town of Orono.
I'm Evan Rickert, and I'm a retired city and land use planner. A huge challenge is figuring out how to integrate all the pieces that make up a town or a city or a region, and having enough resources to invest in the planning and related professions to do that. And that's grown quite a bit actually over the years since I started working in Maine in the 1970s, but it's waxed and waned. There was a period around the late 1980s into the early 1990s where it kind of hit a peak.
It was during that peak, while serving as the state director, that Evan was instrumental in the creation of Maine's landmark Growth Management Act,
which was a very much a milestone act that had been negotiated by Maine Municipal Association representing municipalities, the Merida representing developers and realtors, and others. It was really a landmark piece of legislation, and I was fortunate enough, I and my colleagues were fortunate enough to be in the thick of it during that time, and got the tools really to begin to integrate concepts of land use and transportation and natural resources and wildlife and economic development, and help towns see how these pieces fit together.
Evan authored the early manuals that set the tone for the land use planning profession in Maine, including Comprehensive Planning, a manual for Maine communities, and the Sensible Transportation Handbook. Evan's support of R&D in Maine led toward the creation of the Maine Technology Institute, and the Gulf of Maine Ocean Observing System. He co-founded Upstart Maine, a coalition of entrepreneur support programs in the Bangor region, and still serves today on the board that oversees the Upstart Center for Entrepreneurship in Orono. And in the area of conservation, Evan served as the state's lead negotiator for the decommissioning of the Edwards Dam on the Kennebec River in Augusta, a project that provided a nationally recognized model for river restoration. He also served as planner on a 4-person advisory team instrumental in shaping the Moosehead Lake Concept Plan, which established a 360,000-acre conservation easement in the region, one of the largest such easements in the United States. Evan developed the Maine Vernal Pool Special Area Management Plan, a method of mitigating vernal pool impacts while enabling compact development within a municipality's designated growth area. In recent years, Evan has assisted developers integrating smart growth principles into projects such as the Chestnut Street Lofts in Portland and the University Credit Union headquarters in Orono. The depth and breadth of his work is absolutely remarkable, but the thing that his colleagues all seem to value the most about him is his unwavering kindness, consideration, and humility.
Almost everything that I have claimed to accomplish has really been a team effort. There's almost nothing that I did by myself. Sometimes it wasn't even my initiative. It was just something I joined. And sometimes it was my initiative that other people joined. But it's the partnerships that I developed with various people that was really terrific. And I owe an awful lot to those partnerships.
We are therefore proud to present Evan Rickert, Champion of Smart Growth, with this 2021 Maine Smart Growth Award. What a remarkable career. Congratulations, Evan, and thank you for all you've done to promote smart growth in Maine.
From a story about an incredible Maine person who knows how to connect all the pieces, we now turn to this year's final awardee, an exceptional Maine project that managed to connect all the pieces.
Portland Housing Authority, Solterra Apartments, outstanding project. Portland Housing is Maine's largest housing authority and provides direct service to about 10% of Portland's population.
I'm Cheryl Sessions, and I'm the Executive Director of the Portland Housing Authority. The mission of the Portland Housing Authority is to provide safe, sanitary, affordable housing to residents of the Portland area.
Completed in 2020, Solterra Apartments is a 55-unit, 6-story, mixed-use family apartment building with ground floor commercial space located at the corner of Boyd and Lancaster Streets. In order to promote economic diversity, the 55 apartments at Solterra serve residents from a broad range of economic circumstances.
My name is Jay Waterman. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development at the Portland Housing Authority and the Portland Housing Development Corporation. We have 55 units of housing here at Solterra. 44 units are affordable and 11 are market rate. We also have 28 units that have project-based vouchers, and we have 5 units that are actually reserved for residents who are formerly homeless, coming from the city's shelter program.
We also have a serious challenge with affordable housing here in Portland, and what PHA is doing is trying to provide more opportunities within our own footprint to increase the number of available affordable housing units.
In the 1960s, as part of urban renewal, more than 200 structures, many owned by low-income residents, were demolished to make way for a divided highway here. Solterra repairs a significant swath of that social and physical damage by reintroducing equitable housing choices, mixed uses, street grid connectivity, and walkability. Portland Housing places high importance on these contributions it is making to the rebuilding of the Bayside neighborhood.
So as Cheryl mentioned, this is part of a bigger master plan for the East Bayside neighborhood that we have. We have a lot of underutilized property in the area, and we also really hope to recreate a little bit more of the lost Bayside street grid and mixed use and mixed income properties in this area. So Solterra, as well as Bayside Anchor across the street, are pieces to a larger puzzle.
The name Solterra was derived from the Latin root for sun and earth, sol terra, paying homage to the solar panels on the roof as well as the food security and gardening focus of the community that was created here.
We have quite an integrated services program through a lot of service providers in Portland. We have a partnership with Cultivating Community, who is also our tenant in the building, and they have classes for residents in terms of nutrition and food security, and also run the community gardens that's next door. We also have a telehealth program and a partnership with Greater Portland Health. They bring telemedicine and telehealth services directly to the residents in their units.
Never to rest on their laurels, Portland Housing sees Solterra not as a finish line, but as the starting point to larger plans to serve Portland's ongoing housing needs.
We are trying to look within our footprint to look for opportunities to add additional units, as well as to position our current portfolio for the future, to do major rehabs and add units as we go. This is an example of an underutilized piece of land that we had that we were able to add a number of units. You'll be seeing that happen on several other of our properties within our portfolio.
All of us at GrowSmart Maine want to congratulate the Portland Housing Authority on a job exceptionally well done. We are therefore proud to present the Portland Housing Authority's Solterra Apartments with this 2021 Maine Smart Growth Award.
So that's it, your 2021 4th Annual Maine Smart Growth Awards. Thanks for watching.
And congratulations, and above all, thank you to all of this year's awardees for the leading edge work you do to make Maine a more equitable, livable, and sustainable place for us all to call home.
And thanks also to the incredible nominations we received from across the state. You really made it difficult for our judges to choose who's for.
And finally, thank you to our 4 esteemed judges for taking time from your schedules to support this program.
We look forward to seeing you all again in 2022. Again, thank you and congratulations to all the award winners. We have a representative here in Biddeford from CB, one of our award winners, and I know that several other of our award winners are connecting virtually as well today. So congratulations again. And thank you very much, Ethan, for pulling that all together. Well done again. Thank you. And at this point, I will turn it over to Becca Casey, the incoming board chair, for the next portion, very brief portion of our agenda. Thank you.
I know. It's not quite as exciting as the film time. Thank you, Ethan. That was very fun. Thank you, Ben, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm excited to step up as chair. I've been on the board for, I think, 6 years now, but was attending these meetings and other GrowSmart, engaging in other GrowSmart events and initiatives prior to that. So I'm excited to take the wheel for a little bit. I will be very brief. What I have here are some recognitions of some folks, and also, before that, I'm also going to say hi to Robin, who is a former board member there, who was on the board for quite a while. I don't know if she's been recognized in the past, but we have 2 board members who are not in the room today, but are joining us virtually. You saw David Webster and also Buzz Lamb, who are terming out on the board. They have both had incredible contributions. They have spent 9 years giving their wisdom and energy and clarifying thoughts and suggestions to us. And so we thank them very much. And if you're watching, we have gifts for you as well. So you have to see somebody in person hopefully soon, or we'll have to mail them, but it's more fun in person. So please a round of applause for David and Buzz. I was holding the wrong one. I'm going to give somebody else's gift away. And then in addition For recognitions for service as chair of the board, I will also recognize David Webster, who served as chair in 2015 and 2016. Ethan Boxer-Macomer, who you saw virtually, he was 2019 and 2020. And then present in the room with us today, Carol Morris. Carol was our chair from 2017 and 2018. And Carol, I have a gift for you. Would you like to come up? Will you make me feel better? And my predecessor, Ben Smith, who was our chair for the past year for 2021. And I'm like, where did he go? Are there any other business meeting, or shall we adjourn? Oh, and then to the tours, thank you. So that will, go ahead. What? The business meeting is adjourned? Okay, thank you. And then you have the last spot. We'll let Ben finish strong.
Yeah, thank you, Becca. And just a final word, I do want to thank sponsors once again, and again, I think this was a great event. Really appreciate the support, and certainly appreciate all of your attendance and time today, whether you're here in Biddeford or attending virtually. You make the work that we do possible, so thank you very much again. And in closing, there will be a survey that will be going out. There will be a continuation of the conversations we've started today with an online event on November 10th. That will be a more hands-on continuation of what we can take away and we'll continue to work on over the next year as we continue to make these connections between climate action and a sustainable economy for the state. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you again, Nancy. And I'm being reminded that in many locations, including here, there will be walking tours and city experience events. So stay tuned for those at your local destination, and we will talk with you very soon. Thank you.